Dave Shaw came face to face with the remains of a person who had left this world a decade ago and decided to come to his rescue. In 2005, a renowned diver made a terrifying discovery in an underwater cave in South Africa.
When I looked across to the left, that's when I saw the body that had been lost 10 years earlier.
As Dave's support team waited patiently on the surface, they received a message.
Dave's not coming.
These are the last moments of Dave Shaw, an experienced diver who decided to rescue a body stuck in the depths of a cave, and whose last moments were caught on camera. Deon Dreyer was born in 1974. He was described by those close to him as a young man with a hunger for life. He was an adventurer who enjoyed hunting, racing cars, and scuba diving. He was only 20 years old when in 1994 he dived the Bushman Hole, also known as Boismanskat, one of the world's deepest freshwater underwater caves, located in the Kalahari Desert in South Africa. The underwater cave has a total depth of 283 meters. To understand this magnitude, we can compare its length with the height of the Eiffel Tower. For a human being of normal height is quite small when compared to these dimensions. At 270 meters deep in the cave, Dreyer had difficulties returning to the surface and left this world forever. Due to the challenging nature of the cave, it was difficult to retrieve Deon's body, which remained trapped and drowned there. It was speculated that he had lost consciousness due to hypercapnia and oxygen intoxication. Hypercapnia occurs when there are elevated levels of carbon dioxide in the blood. This occurs in divers when they retain too much carbon dioxide caused by abnormal breathing. Symptoms include shortness of breath, drowsiness, dizziness, convulsions, loss of consciousness, which may eventually lead to death, especially in the condition Deon was in. 10 years later, 50-year-old Dave Shaw is an Australian man and an airline pilot, but his true passion is scuba diving. October 28, 2004. David breaks a record in Bushman Cave, where after an hour he finds Deon's body. He knew who he had found because there is a plaque dedicated to Dreyer made by his parents, who surrendered to the possibility of recovering their son's body.
To repeat the world record dive in an attempt to recover Deon Dreyer's body so that the Dreyer family can finally put closure to this very sad chapter in their lives.
Shaw sets out on a mission to rescue the body, but he's unable to move it because Deon's oxygen tanks are stuck in the mud, 270 meters deep at the bottom of the cavern. Dave has been down deep for a long time. He's training himself and breathing heavily to be able to rescue Deon's remains. He's on a mission that requires more preparation than he imagined. So Dave decides to tie a rope to Deon's tanks and return to the surface. Shaw unveils his discovery and promises Deon's parents that he'll get his body back. He will retrieve his body 10 years after his demise.
A lot of people say, what do you want with it? It's a bag of bones. To me, it's not a bag of bones, it's my son. I don't care what's inside that wetsuit. To me, that's not important. It's my son.
Recovering a body that is in such depths is a very difficult task. It requires a plan, coordination, and assistance from a team of divers and doctors. Dave Shaw will follow the line he left previously anchored to Deon's body, untie the body from the tanks, and place it in a special body bag. After 10 years, Dreyer's body is mostly a skeleton wrapped in his wetsuit. Dave will have a camera strapped to the helmet of his head, which is specially modified to survive the high pressures underwater, and it will record his entire journey. The whole operation is planned in detail, as being too long at such depths is very dangerous. The descent will be a rapid one of approximately 13 minutes. Then it will be 5 minutes untying and retrieving Deon's body. However, ascending to the surface should be much slower than descending, so that Dave doesn't succumb to the symptoms of decompression sickness, such as tingling of extremities, paralysis, headache, vertigo, difficulty in breathing, among many others. Decompression consists of properly managing the gas as it leaves the body and rises to the surface, since, as it rises, small bubbles may form in the blood. If these manifest themselves in the brain, spine, or ear, it can cause serious or even life-threatening injuries. The only way to avoid these problems is to ascend slowly and stop at certain heights. The case of the experienced Peruvian diver Alejandro Ramos made it clear what can happen when ascending a long length in a short time. Alejandro climbed 35 meters in just 1 minute, and this ended up deforming his entire body, since this is a route that must be done in 2 to 3 hours minimum. Dave's ascent will take approximately 12 hours. To facilitate his efforts, his lifelong friend Don Shirley will be waiting for him at 220 meters to hold Dion's body. Several support divers will be at various depths and will be handing the body to each other to finally bring it to the surface. Everyone will have a slow ascent, but no one more so than Dave, because he is in the deepest part of the cavern. During this period, Dave will have to rest and change gases. There will be tanks attached to the guide rope, and support divers will meet Dave at various stages to make sure he is okay. Everything is ready and coordinated to carry out the plan. January 8th, 2005, and the rescue begins. Everything was going well, but after 1.5 hours of Dave's dive, the team on the surface receives a note from the support divers saying that there has been no sign of Dave Shaw or Don Shirley, who were supposed to be reunited with the support divers by now. They later discovered that Dave was unable to meet Don when he was supposed to, leading Don to dive down to investigate what had happened. Another note came to the surface. It was from Don. Don watched Dave fade off into the distance. Dave Shaw has passed away. The mission now suddenly changes, and instead of rescuing one body, there are now 2 that will have to be pulled from the depths of the cave. Don, in this process, has had significant difficulty reaching Dave's body. Don exceeded his objective depth, and his breathing controller imploded, so he will have to manually add oxygen to his gas mixture. In doing so, he inadvertently raised oxygen pressure. Don raised his oxygen pressure too high and got poisoned, and he poisoned himself. Now he suffers the symptoms of this, and Don is forced to leave the mission. Don is suffering from vertigo. He loses his balance. He lets go of the rope that was guiding him and begins to spin, unable to identify the path that will lead him to the surface. He is on the verge of losing consciousness. Luckily, Don manages to hold on to the rope and stabilizes himself, but his condition is serious. He is now vomiting, which causes great difficulty breathing at such depths. He's running out of breath. And this is when he writes the note reporting his and Dave's condition. Now the efforts of the support divers are focused solely on saving Don Shirley. They couldn't risk losing another colleague. Don is very weak and needs medical attention as soon as possible. But they can't get him to the surface quickly. His ascent will take hours. As we have already seen, ascending quickly could cause serious after effects. Don is going through hell underwater. After 12 hours, Don Shirley is rescued and pulled out of Bushman's Hole. He is very sick, but fortunately alive. Don spends the next 2 weeks in and out of a decompression chamber. His recovery will be slow. It will be at least a month before he can walk or think clearly again. Dion Dreyer's parents are devastated, not only because the hope of recovering their son's body has vanished, but also because it has cost another man his life, while another is seriously injured. The operation has resulted in a major catastrophe. A desolate mood abounds among the support team. While the next few days are being devoted to retrieving equipment and ropes from the depths. Everyone was sure they would never see them again, but on the 3rd day, the last of the equipment is recovered, and with it came 2 bound bodies. They were Dave Shaw and Dion Dreyer. The bodies are carried out of the Bushman hole, and the camera that Dave had mounted on his helmet is brought in to examine the footage and thus resolve the fate he faced.
We've actually viewed the tape in every possible way that you could actually think and really interpreted what exactly went on.
These were Dave Shaw's last moments. The log begins with Dave shaking Don's hand just before diving. Then, with a flashlight in his hand, he begins his descent. Everything so far is going according to plan. Dave checks that his levels are okay. He attaches the rope that will guide him down into the depths and descends, encountering all the cylinder stages that were attached to the rope. Dave reaches the cave floor and reaches Dion's body. He pulls out the special bag and begins to put Dreyer's legs in it. But immediately a problem occurs. Somehow, the tanks that still held Dion's body came loose from the mud. This held his remains, but now the body is loose. Although the visible parts of Dion's body are bones, inside his suit his body has turned into a substance called adipocere, also known as cadaveric wax. This causes the body to float and makes it more difficult for Dave to get it into the bag as the body moves at its own will. Dave currently has a lot to worry about. Between the floating body, the rope tied to the tanks, the special bag for moving Dion's body, and the flashlight he was carrying in his hand, everything is getting tangled up as Dave struggles to hold everything at once. Dave will now begin to feel the effects of nitrogen narcosis, also known as the Martini effect. This is caused by the intoxicating effect that respiratory gases cause at high pressures. Every 15.2 meters in the depths of seawater, a similar effect to a dry martini on an empty stomach is produced. Shaw is practically getting drunk on nitrogen, and it will start to affect his vision and coordination. Dave realizes he needs to untie Dion's tanks from the rope, but as he tries, he slips off the sloping floor. As he returns to the body, the effort and struggle Dave has had in the depths begins to take its toll on him. He tries to grab the scissors to cut the rope again, but is unable to do so. The intoxication is clouding his thinking. As he struggles with the body, the camera catches the chilling sighting of Dion's glasses. Dave is breathing heavily now. He has already spent too much time trying to take Dion's remains. However, he realizes too late that he needs to leave. Dave can still make it if he leaves now, but as he turns to leave, Dave gets tangled in the rope. Dave Shaw is exhausted, dizzy, and breathing heavily, and he's probably starting to panic by now. He keeps trying to free himself, but has less and less coordination. He is less and less coherent, and still has a long uphill battle. Dave fights to the end until he passes out.
And he basically succumbed to all the pressures that you've got at that sort of time, and his breathing slowly faded, and Dave passed away.
This rescue Dave planned without getting anything in return cost him his life. However, he made good on his promise, and now Dion Dreyer's parents are reunited with their son to finally give him a break out of the dark depths of the underwater cave. Dave Shaw was very brave and noble to put the rescue of a stranger in his hands, and he will forever be remembered as a hero by his wife and 2 children.